Welcome to another episode of DSC's Charity Questions podcast, where we ask people in the charity sector the questions you want to know. And today we've got a really exciting topic. I'm here with my colleague in the training team, Eileen Browne, to talk about well-being and well-being in the charity sector, whether that's for us as individuals or for organisations, or maybe the future of well-being involved in hybrid working, flexible working, whatever we want to call it. So welcome, Eileen, to the podcast, and please just introduce yourself to the listeners so they know a little bit more about you.
Thank you very much, George. Hello, everyone. My name is Eileen, as George has said, Eileen Browne. I'm one of the training consultants at DSC, the Director of Social Change. I feel it's a real privilege to be part of this team and working with people like George. So as part of many of the courses that I deliver, well-being will be an element, and usually for in-house courses, that's where we train specific organisations or teams within organisations. They ask us to include an element of well-being, just recognising the importance it now plays, especially as the way that we work has changed over the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to answering these questions, and hopefully I can share some tips. I'm not a practitioner, I'm just a trainer, so I'll be sharing what I know and what I know will work or does work. Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks, George.
And sometimes that's what it's about, isn't it? Just sharing what works for us and seeing what sticks with people. So
yeah.
I think we're going to go straight into the deep end with a really tough one here, Eileen. This is a difficult question from one of our colleagues, Kathy. If we were to describe ourselves as feeling well in work, what might we say? What could that look like? What could that feel like? What do you think well-being looks like in work?
That's a really interesting question, because when I started training, I thought, right, what's the definition? I always look for what does that word actually mean? And I use the state of being comfortable, healthy, and or happy. But there are other definitions. The aspiration to live well, I really love that one as well. But I think it's really important to recognise that feeling well will look and feel different to all of us as individuals. So there's no one way of feeling well and sounding well. What's really important is that we all take time to recognise when we are feeling well. Absolutely. Why is that? What happened? How did we respond to something? And that's mentally and emotionally, but also physically. So in terms of our mental wellness, being open, being clear, being in a really good mood, what's caused that? So for me, laughter is what links to my good mood.
Making me laugh saying
again,
that.
Yeah, just having a laugh. And we do that in our working lives here at DSC. There's always someone who's cracking a joke, and that sort of lifts the mood, even if you're not feeling particularly great that day. So I think what's really important, what does well-being sound and look like for us as individuals? And when we know that, we can do more of that type of stuff to help us lift ourselves, especially if we're not having a particularly good time or a good day.
Love that one. And I love the laughter example there, being able to use that humour in work if possible, of course. So what about any other practical acts maybe we could do to either help our colleagues or ourselves in work?
I think from a workplace point of view, the first thing that will really help us is to have absolute clarity about what it is we're supposed to be doing. I think a lot of the problems that I've come across in my training sessions is where people aren't sure what's expected of them. What are they supposed to be producing? What does success look and feel like? And I always say to them, if you don't have that clarity, it's not actually your fault. The person who introduced you or brought you into the role, it's their responsibility to make sure you have all of that information. But what we need to do then, if we don't have that, is to ask. Where there is confusion, there's going to be anxiety, that's going to be stress, and all of the negative things that could happen to us as a result. So the first thing I would say is be clear. Ask if you're not, why are you in your role? What does success look like, so that you can make sure you're on that path? Even those days where it feels overwhelming or you don't feel you're coping, just go back to your purpose, why you're there, what difference your job is going to make. But that needs to be clear. And I have it sort of written down, and I have our purpose and our goals and our values right in front of me, so I can reach for it as and when I need it. Definitely. So once we have that clarity, thank you, George, once we have that clarity, then it's about maintaining ourselves in order to produce the results that we're here to produce. So things like having regular breaks, especially if we're working remotely. You know, we're so hard on ourselves in this sector. I've got to keep going. I've got to push through. So many people are relying on me.
Absolutely.
They're relying on you to be healthy and happy so that you can help them. So sometimes we just need to sort of stop and say, what do I need so that I can help my colleagues and be there for our beneficiaries? So things like just taking regular breaks. You know, I reward myself when I've completed a particular piece of work with chocolates. I've
Love
got a tin here that I've got chocolate eclairs in at the moment. And when I've done it, I get one of these and it cheers me up no end. So, you know, just finding ways to get the work done, but to think about yourself through the day. So exercise. And I might just go and walk up and down stairs.
Yeah.
If you can schedule in time to have a walk outside, even better. If not, just opening a window, taking a gulp of fresh air every so often will make a world of difference. Again, especially if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed.
Love that.
Don't just push on, stop for a little bit, refocus, reflect, and then start again. And breathe. I got this from George, and constant reminders, the importance of the breath and that 5-second intake of breath and 5-second release of the breath. And as George said, it's the release of the breath that we're sort of allowing some of that tension and negative feelings to leave us. So I would recommend doing that. And I have started doing that again, George, since you mentioned it the other day. So just some of those things. So connect with other people, interact, and just having those relationships sustains us as well. Be active, as I say. Just be aware of what's going on around you, so you don't feel isolated. You feel part of the growth and the development and the delivery of success. Keep learning. Just have that open mind. And when we pick up something new, like the breath, it changes us. You know, it invigorates us and gives us energy. And find a way to support and help other people. That's such an important thing for us as humans, is to help other people. So they're just some of the things you might want to just think about, where maybe some of those gaps are that you can sort of build in.
I'm loving that. So we started off talking about targets, expectations, having a framework to work in. I mean, maybe we talk about being delegated to, not just being told what to do, but here's the outcome, go and do it. We know this boosts creativity. We know this empowers people. I love that one. And we're no longer just ruling with an iron fist by attendance or anything like that, are we? It's about bringing people on the journey with us. And then,
exactly,
of course, we got into a little bit about ourselves then, and breath work, and potentially opening our windows to the outside and movement. And I think if you were to speak to your organization, they would probably encourage you to go and use work time to go for a walk. And I know there's many organizations that do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the really positive things about DSC. We get those times within DSC working time. Absolutely. We get the opportunity to connect socially within DSC time. So, you know, that again is great encouragement to do it.
Cool. I love that. So we're looking at organizational development a little bit, but also a little bit about looking after ourselves. And in terms of any more practical steps, what do you think is maybe an obvious one people miss? That's quite a tough question because it's different for everybody. But in your experience, is there one or two things that maybe stand out as people maybe forget to look after themselves?
I think the things that I've talked about, and those 5 aspects: connect, be active, keep learning, give. I think another thing is just, and I got this from part of this from yourself, George. One of the things that we forget to do is to switch off. You know, again, we're so mindful of our role being so important and people relying on us, but that's part of our well-being, and remembering to switch off. So not just have breaks through the day, but what do you do at the end of the day that says, I'm moving from my workplace now to my home place, especially if we are working in our home spaces. So is it just taking off your name badge? I had someone on my time management course who used to literally leave the house, walk to the end of her path, turn round, walk back up, put the key in the door and say to herself, I'm home. Perfect. And that's what she did to make the break between work and home. So what can you do? Where do you work in your home space? Can you make sure that that's where you work and you don't spread your work around the rest of the house? So home feels like home and work feels like work. Just a couple of really important things. And also, we talk about work-life blend in DSC. We sort of moved away from work-life balance, if that was ever possible anyway. If we are working remotely, if the doorbell goes and it's the next thing you've ordered from Amazon, you're excited. It gives you a bit of energy.
Yeah.
If you're not in a meeting or you haven't got any calls to make, go and answer the door. If you've got time, open the package, get that sense of joy and happiness, and then go back to work. For me, I like to put the washing on first thing in the morning, but then through the day, I'll go and put the washing out. I don't want to be stressing about how much ironing I'm going to have to do because the washing is sitting in the bottom of the machine. It just gives us that break away from the screen, but it means we're keeping on top of our home lives through the day. So by the time we finish, we're less stressed. Maybe you've started dinner already.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. What we just need to guard against is allowing ourselves to be distracted. So instead of spending 10, 15 minutes, we've spent an hour. So we just need to be very mindful of that, but not stress ourselves to say 9 o'clock, open the laptop, 5:30, close the laptop. The reality is life is going to interject, and sometimes we just need to deal with it so that we feel calmer, more in control, so that we can deliver what's required of us.
And in the same way you might look after what's going on in your home during that kind of working hours, you're probably going to have some really good ideas for what you can contribute to work outside of that time as well. And so it does all kind of come back round on itself, doesn't it?
The creativity comes from the break. Not when we're trying to work. It comes from the break from the work. That's when our brains get the opportunity to sort of open up a bit. You're exactly right, George.
So I'm on my honeymoon next week and I have my phone and I have a little in tray on my phone. So if I have any ideas for courses or anything to do with DSC, it just gets written in there. Don't think about it again. And when I come back to DSC, I can look at that. So that blend there, isn't it? I love it.
And that's really important, the point that you just made there, George, about stress. And again, just listening to you sometimes. Stress is when we've got everything up here. And sometimes stress, the release of stress is just to write it down, get it out of your brain, written down. Don't worry about it for now. It's there. I'll get back to it. So it's another really good point I took from my colleague, George. So when we are stressed, sometimes we need to stop and say, right, what is stressing me out? It's because I've got A, B, C, D, E, F to do. Write them down. Work out when you're going to do them. The stress mitigates straight away. You've got a plan now.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
and we know that poor productivity is now linked directly to poor mental health as well.
Yes.
So when we can, as managers or individuals, if any of the listeners out there are working in teams or working as a manager in teams, we know that responsibility to help people be more productive is going to make them happier. I must say, I didn't create the whole stress idea being written down. I stole that from another expert, David Allen, in the book Getting Things Done. And if you're listening to this now thinking I could do with a kick to my productivity, Getting Things Done by David Allen was inspirational for me. It's a bit of a lifestyle change there. Yeah. So we love that at DSC. We talk about that on a lot of our courses as well. Yeah. So thinking about our colleagues then a little bit more, Eileen, if you're on a call maybe and you maybe see some behavior or something that maybe shows that a colleague might be struggling with their well-being, their mental health, their physical health, would you step in? And if you did, what could you do to help there, Eileen?
I think I would step in. I think it's important, first of all, to recognise that there might be an issue. And the way that we do that is, what are our colleagues usually like? What is their performance usually like? And if we see a pattern that is moving away from the usual, that's when I would think something's not right. So I would personally ask. I would ask the question, and I would do that verbally. I wouldn't send them an email or a Teams message, but I would ask if there's anything happening that I could help with. And I think that's the key thing. So they may just want to talk. Is there anything happening that you want to talk about? Is there anything you think I can do? If you're going to ask that question, you have to be sure that if they give you an answer, if you can't sincerely say, yes, I can do that, please make that absolutely clear. Because if they're reaching out for help and you say, no problem, I can do that, but you can't, you may be exacerbating the situation. Absolutely. So offer help. If you don't feel you can deliver that, just be open and honest, but maybe just give them some suggestions as to who they might speak to, manager, mental health first aiders, if you have them. I would always want to be part of that support network and part of that support. But I would speak to them first before I spoke to anybody else. I wouldn't see it as my responsibility to tell the manager that somebody was having issues, but I would definitely step in to see if there's anything I could do to help. Maybe just listen.
Nice. Yeah,
Years ago,
definitely.
I worked for the post office. I think I've shared this story before.
Yeah.
And I had a sales team, targets of millions. It was huge.
Mm.
And I used to say to them, on those days where you really just needed to scream, phone me up, just say your name clearly, and then scream down the phone. And if that's all you needed to do to feel better, that's absolutely fine. That was my role as the manager. So, yeah, make yourself available, but be honest about what you can do to help them.
I'm a big fan of raw therapy. My pillows have experienced some raw therapy in their time.
Yeah,
nice.
It's really important. And knowing when your colleagues know that you're there and you've offered to help, just it's that connection again, and it's really, really important.
Absolutely. You'll be judged on the questions you ask more than what you tell them as well. Don't forget. It's about the open questions, the probing questions. That's
Absolutely.
not like you. Are you okay? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so let's say we're maybe in an organization there where there isn't such a focus on this, whether it's in the charity sector or beyond. Maybe there's no one-to-ones, no appraisal system, no time with your manager, no opportunity to have that feedback space. So if you're sat there in an organization like that, but you want this, what might you say to the leaders to try and show the value of this and try and convince them that actually we want to be in this new culture, this new working world?
I think the way sometimes that we can show values, first of all, have the conversation, be open to the conversation and ask the questions. But sometimes I think the way that we show value is to ask what could happen, what could the consequences be if we did nothing, or if we took away what support there was.
Love
and
that
just think
question.
about that. So people not getting the support they need, what would happen? So I always push to the end, what would happen if people don't get the support that they need? They might crash.
Yeah.
How would that affect them as human beings, the people that love and care for them? How will that affect the team? How will it affect the organisation? And therefore the beneficiary. If people leave, how does that affect our ability to get the work done, to again provide the support? And think of the money, time, energy, emotion that needs to be invested in fixing the problems of not having that support as part of the strategic plan, as part of the everyday. So sometimes looking at the value is what would happen if we didn't have it. So that's the sort of conversation I would have. Not everybody may not be as upfront as I could feel I could be. So it might be just having that conversation with your peers first of all. See how everybody else feels. Raise it in your one-to-ones, raise it in your appraisals or in the team meetings. As a manager, as managing teams before, my responsibility is to provide support and help and ask, what can I do for you? And if I had my team come to me and say, we don't feel supported, we don't feel this is in place, I would feel duty bound to do something about it. So I think that's the first thing. Open conversation, ask lots of questions, but point out the value by the consequences of not having that support.
Definitely. And maybe you might even consider looking at a staff forum, something like that, something we have at DSC.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and this is how leadership leads by example is really, really important when it comes to well-being. So being open and giving opportunities for staff to have things like staff forum. Staff forum is where we get to talk about the things that we think are working well, things where we feel there are gaps. And then those suggestions, our thoughts and our feelings, our insights are taken back to our CEO, who will then respond, either to introduce or to say why it can't be. And, some fantastic ideas have come from Staff Forum, but also the opportunity for working groups. It's just leadership being open to opportunities for us all to be involved if we want to. So how can we progress this? How can we make well-being better? How can we make it work for everybody? And people from all parts of the organisation be involved in that opportunity. That all comes from leadership. And of course, leading by example, taking their holidays when holidays are booked, not working through the night, that sort of thing. But so guidance and the direction from our leadership teams needs to include well-being. It's got to be front and center of everything that's planned for now and for the future. Absolutely.
Definitely. I love that you said leading by example. I mean, I've worked places where it's almost chicken at the end of the day to see who leaves before the CEO. But ultimately, that's not the right culture we want to be looking after, isn't it? It doesn't support productivity either.
That's right.
We're all on the journey, aren't we? Absolutely. So let's think about some maybe of your favorite initiatives you've seen outside of DSC then, Eileen, now. And maybe you've mentioned it already on this session, but what's your favorite wellbeing initiative you've seen?
Well, I had someone on one of my courses. They have Wellbeing Wednesdays, and I thought that was a fantastic idea. So once a week, and it was usually from about 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, no more work is done. The whole focus is on the social aspect and the individuals. So they have group work, they have advice sessions, they did quizzes. And one of the things that I really liked was once a month or so, the Wellbeing Wednesday was about clearing the desks, tidying up the workspace, whether in the office or at home, just to clear and open up the space so that people felt that they had more space, and that creates space up here as well. So I thought that was absolutely brilliant, and just having time for them. And again, it was in the work day, which is another great thing that DSC does, as I say, and to celebrate the wins. So at DSC, we have check-in every morning. It's just 5 or 10 minutes. That's about well-being. Is everybody who's supposed to be here? And managers might be asked just to check. If we don't know why someone's not there, the manager will be asked to just check that they're okay.
Absolutely.
That's the key thing.
That duty of care there, isn't it?
Absolutely a duty of care. And then in the afternoons, we check out as a team. And again, we, sometimes we get into the the work aspects of the day, but generally it's, how did your training session go? Did you get any sort of immediate feedback? How are you feeling about this? What's coming up that might be a challenge? So that's where we communicate as a team. And again, it's that connection, it's the giving bit that I spoke about before.
I spent the last 2 weeks. So I spent the last 2 weeks just sharing wedding photos, pretty much, actually.
Absolutely. But that lifted us all, because it was such a joyous occasion for George, and he came back and he was, he's still a little bit high from it, I might say, but that's a fantastic thing. But that's about George as a person, not as a producer of results. And that's what we need to make sure that we maintain.
Love that. I just want to reiterate a couple of things that you said before. You mentioned staff forum and working groups. On the staff forum, we would love to help anybody. If you're sat there thinking, I like this idea, please reach out to us through the podcast. We have a colleague, Dean, who has helpfully run our staff forum for a long time now, and we've had organizations join just from a perspective of having a look at how we do it. So if you're interested in staff forum, please do reach out to me, Eileen, or my colleague Dean, or just reach out to us through the podcast. And on the working groups as well, I'm in a working group for a podcast. DSC does not pay me to host the Charity Questions podcast. It's something I do because I've got clear targets and clear expectations that I'm meeting. And because I'm meeting them, it allows me to work in this working group. I'm also in the staff forum working group and the wellbeing working group. And we're meeting today, actually, the wellbeing team. And
that's right.
When we empower people and we say, look, these are your clear targets, crack on, and this is what we want to see, and I'm here to help you if you need anything. This is what we start to see: more creativity, more empowered staff. Love that. Absolutely.
Another thing that our CEO, Deborah Alcott-Tyler, has encouraged are Zoom coffee breaks. I want you to chit chat. That's what she said. Because when we were in the office, that's what we did. We didn't work flat out from 9 to 5:30. We met people at the photocopier and at the tea urn, and we chatted about what films we saw or the football scores. That's about well-being, even if we didn't recognise it. That's about the social connections, and they're so important. So Zoom coffee breaks, where you might just set up a Zoom room for 10-15 minutes with someone you may have met regularly in the office, but you hardly see them now. And just talk about anything other than work. And the other thing that I'm happy to share that DSC does is, just making you feel part of the team. So we welcome people. We welcome people. The CEO is involved in that. If she's not available, it will be one of the directors. We make a point of welcoming people so they feel part of the family straight away. We celebrate birthdays. We sing awfully.
We do,
but we celebrate people's birthdays, because again, it's about making people feel good and recognizing them as, you know, as human beings. And we celebrate when people leave, because that's a success for DSC. That's how we see it. And so it's all about how we make people feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really key to well-being. And a really important point that one of our colleague Kathy made in terms of looking after ourselves so that we can help others. She gives the analogy of being on a plane where you have to put your own air mask on first. Absolutely. So we need to find ways to sustain ourselves and others before we can, you know, really sincerely help them.
I think that's a key point, isn't it? And also there's so many elements of working in a charity that provide additional responsibility, because you're representing the wider charity sector as well. We're not pushing profit. Yes, we want to look for our charitable objects primarily, but if we're not looking after ourselves, and even if that means we're delivering services effectively for maybe young children or cancer patients or all of those really difficult topics that we work in, if we're not looking after ourselves, well, there's a mental health charity that we're creating an additional beneficiary for there, isn't it? Like Mind, and we are that beneficiary. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, can we put ourselves in a position to be well before we then become well enough to help others as well?
Absolutely.
I love that. And you mentioned Deborah as well. I think that's come up before about the welcoming people to DSC, and just to add to that, she also links it directly to the cause. And so we're kind of a step away. And so our motto is helping you to help others. And she does a really good job, for example, if someone's in marketing, saying, well, that newsletter that may be able to give someone access to one of our books, then might mean they get that funding bid accepted that gets them a wheelchair or whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
It's really lovely to link that as well.
Yeah. So powerful. So you know why you were chosen, and the impact, the bit of work that you do, the impact that that's going to have. And not had that in any other organization. It's really powerful.
Yeah, it's been a nice reminder for me every time we attend those parties as well, actually, just to be like, crikey, yeah, we are in the thick of it, aren't we? Because sometimes we can feel a step away. Lovely.
Absolutely.
So I think we'll just summarize, maybe in this hybrid world, there's a lot of us who are digital only. I mean, I don't remember the last time me and you actually met face to face. Maybe a couple of years ago now, although we see each other every day. So in terms of digital tools that can be used to support staff wellbeing, are there any tools you recommend to people out there?
Yeah, I think, again, from a leadership point of view, just making it possible for people to give their views, their insights, share their successes, what works for them. And so just having regular connection, staff surveys, for instance, people being able to give their views and their insights anonymously. Yeah. So also share any challenges or things that they don't feel are working very well, but then knowing that that's going to be responded to. Somebody is looking at that and something will happen as a result, or the communication will be there as to why and the wherefore. And again, I think with us working remotely, what's become even more important is the regular and consistent communication.
Nice.
The things we may have taken for granted for before, because we were in the office, you know, everybody knows, everybody's heard. That may not be the case. And so another element of our work, and it comes from our leadership, is building in not just well-being into our plans, but communication within the plans. When people aren't sure about what's happening, they'll fill the gap with usually something negative. How's it going to affect me? My job might be going. I have lots of customers, lots of delegates who are going through restructure. And, you know, potentially their jobs might be changing and might be going. The challenge that affects the well-being is when they don't know. So even if it's not good news, knowing that means people can start to make decisions for themselves and for their families. So I think that consistency of the message, so not just what the change might be or what is happening, but why. What is the rationale? So even if people don't feel that they can totally agree with it, they can at least align themselves with the direction the organisation might be having to go in. So I think making sure there is regular communication to individuals, to teams, to the organisation as a whole, and everybody gets that communication at the same time. So if you are hybrid, people in the office don't get it necessarily before people who are remote.
Yeah.
Finding a way to connect everybody online, even if they're sitting at their desk, so everybody gets the information at the same time.
Powerful.
Just making sure that there are resources that people can dip into. So one of the things DSC has set up, and other organisations have done this, is an office, a virtual office. So you might just join the office. You may just say good morning to anybody or everybody that's
in Teams,
there,
yeah?
but then you just get on with your own work.
In Microsoft Teams, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, soft Teams. You might just look up and say, oh, well, George is in the office today, even though he's, miles away in his own home. But again, just helping people to feel connected.
Yeah,
that's really important.
I find that I like it for accountability as well. Actually, I do it for deep work. If I'm working like 10 till 11 on a report, I'm going to jump in that room and maybe I'll have a chit chat, but probably I'll also be more present actually and feel connected just because of that accountability of being in a digital space with others.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just the opportunity for people to have social conversation. So we have, I mentioned our check-in and check-outs. On a Wednesday, we have team brief, and that's where we get information that may have come from the leadership team meeting or a board meeting. But scheduled as part of that meeting is downtime for us to break into small groups to have that social chat. We might sometimes sort of mention work, but the idea is that we talk and have that social chat about the football, the films, that sort of thing. And again, it's mandatory because DSC recognises how important it is. So it's part of team brief. We're not expected to organise that for ourselves. DSC have organised it for us to make sure at least that one time in the week we get the opportunity just to connect as humans. Absolutely. So I think that's really important. And encouraging people to use their calendars to schedule downtime. Mm-hmm. So not running from meeting to meeting, especially as we're now having meetings in these little boxes.
Yeah.
Making sure that you give yourself time for reflection and downtime, between meetings and things like that. So
we both talk about the calendar a lot, don't we? Yeah. And I mean, if you're sat listening to this right now and your lunch isn't in your calendar, it needs to be. Maybe there's some things about, do you have time in your calendar to do your emails? We all do emails every day. Do you know how long it takes you to do yours? Things like this, be productive, put in downtime after a meeting. I know that I'm going to have to reflect on this podcast afterwards. There's half an hour of time afterwards to reflect on it and send the files off to be processed by the master Jose, who will be editing this. That's it.
Absolutely.
Be proactive with our time. Don't react to problems if we can.
Absolutely. And starting the day by completing a task rather than being sucked in by our emails.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just that high that you get from, right, I've done that bit. So you start the day with a sense of achievement. Just think about the impact that has on your psyche for the rest of the day.
Eat that frog, is what it's called.
Frog.
That's another great book there if anybody wants to Google that. Eat that frog.
Absolutely. I often, admit and confess to being the world's best procrastinator. I used to be the world's best. But there are things that we can do, tools we can use to move ourselves away from that. And just release the stress, as I say. That's all about well-being as well. And that's just about breaking down these scary tasks into smaller, manageable, winnable, achievable tasks that we get that regular sense of achievement. Tick, I've done that bit. Tick, I'm making progress. Tick, I'm getting through this. That's about our well-being and feeling in control and on top of what we have to deliver. Well, every day won't be like that because we operate in the real world. But there are tools that we can introduce for ourselves so that we get that regular sense of achievement. And what that does for us as humans is just immeasurable.
I love where you've taken us, Eileen. I think we came into this for just the well-being space, and I thought we might talk a lot about being outside and breath and being present. But actually, there's a whole productivity angle. I think you've spoken about so well. Targets, expectations, having those clear, using our calendar proactively, putting what's really important potentially ahead of our email check in the morning.
Absolutely.
All of those little things. Is there anything else you want to share, Eileen, while we've got the listeners here today?
Just find what works for you. That's the key thing. And I know we're all busy, and I know there doesn't always seem like we have a lot of time, but it's time well spent. So again, when you're feeling great, why is that? What can you do more of so that you have that feeling last longer, you get it more often? The same as, when we're not feeling so great, and maybe there's, our mood has changed, or, our issues are coming out in or on our body. What's happened? What changed? Because those are the things we need to work with. What triggers the symptoms?
Nice.
What happened? And if we can spend a bit of time thinking about that, it means that we can do different next time.
Cool.
And
Love
reduce the likelihood of that happening again. That's all I would say. Take time to reflect.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Build that awareness, everybody.
Yeah.
Amazing. So thank you so much, Eileen. So just to let people know how they can get a hold of you, Browne, and that's Brown with an E on the end, at dsc.org.uk. Any socials you want to share of anybody you tweet?
I am on LinkedIn, but I do prefer people email me, because that's where I'll go to first. Or you can contact me by Teams, but email me first, if that's probably the best way.
Nice. That was Eileen, and that's Eileen Browne with an E on the end, Browne at dsc.org.uk. Thank you so much for joining us today, Eileen, and taking us on your little story through wellbeing. And I know our listeners are going to appreciate this reminder to be present with ourselves, and also to be more productive in work as well, if possible.
Thank you, George. Thank you for inviting me to be on your podcast. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for watching Charity Questions by the Directory of Social Change. So this is the podcast where we bring charity experts to you and we ask them the questions that you provide us via social media. So if you want to get involved, please check out the Directory of Social Change on Instagram, Twitter or LinkedIn. And of course, to hear more about this content and to learn more about Charity Questions, subscribe to our YouTube channel now, and of course, like this video to let us know if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. Cheers.